Greetings, my name is 𝗧𝗜𝗦𝗜𝗧𝗔𝗬. I'm the Process Optimization Specialist for Lakeside Process Control and Emerson Impact Partner. In this video, we're going to cover installing the EnTech Toolkit, setting up the paths that are used by Collect, importing the FHX file to create a tag database, that is, you're using a 𝗦𝗧𝗓𝗓. If you're not using a 𝗦𝗓𝗓, you will have to create your own tag database. Setting up the OPC driver, and then setting up the file naming structure as well. To install the EnTech Collect, obviously you'll have the installation files. All you need to do then is to execute the setup file, and then just pretty much follow the instructions. And it'll install it right onto the Pro Plus. Just click next, and then yes, and then next, and then it'll install it. Pretty simple. Now you do not need to restart your machine, so do not do that. It might cause you some issues. Next thing we need to do is to import the tag database. So the tag database actually contains all the information of every point you want to collect. It also contains, most importantly, the OPC address. And it's very easily done in the 𝗦𝗓𝗓 system. But before we do that, what we need to do first, and I encourage you to do this, is to create a central folder on the desktop. Makes it easy for you to actually put all the information in there, all the data, the tag database, the FHX file, the log files. We'll talk about that later on. But everything's in one folder. And so here I just created the EnTech training folder. Next thing we got to do is to actually do a database export, create an FHX. And so we do that, and obviously I'm going to save it in that folder that I just created. I like to name it specific. Sometimes it might be customer name. It could be date, time of when the tag database was being created, and it will point it to the right folder at the EnTech training folder. And we'll hit save, and it'll create the FHX file. So it's done pretty quickly. Sometimes it might take a little bit longer. You don't have to go from control strategy you could go from the top of the tree, at least from control strategies. So from the EnTech Toolkit, you can actually then go import FHX file, and then you could go find and select the actual FHX we just created. Now, here, a couple of things is that it's going to create two databases. One is really more config control strategies, and the other one is the tag database. We're going to use a tag database. The one on top actually contains all the tuning parameters and things like that. You can see here it actually imported all the PID blocks and so forth. So the PID blocks, some of the analog control blocks right away. And so now we've actually created the tag database. So we need to set up the paths for collect. And the way you do that is you just go File, Set Up Path. Now you don't need to concern yourself with the upper part. Just the last 3 lines here you need to take care of. Run data folder is where all the data will live. Again, we're going to point it to that one central folder on the desktop, EnTech training in this example. So that's all done. The log file, we'll talk a bit more about the log file later on. But what it is, you can document what's going on as you're collecting data. Default, you can change the name if you want to. V54 log file is what it's called. If it doesn't exist, you'll create it. And then the tag database is, now we're going to point it towards the tag database that we created. Remember the underscore tag file? That one right there. And we're good to go. And last thing we want to do after that is go back to set up and look at the tags. Just to look, and this is what the tag database looks like. So it contains all the information right from there. Now the file naming structure is very important in Collect because you can actually literally collect thousands and thousands of data files. And so how do you manage the file naming so that you don't overwrite files for all those data points. And so you set that up. Collect does this very, very well. What you do is you go to, again, to setup. And then you go run number. So run number, the file name is made out of two numbers. One's a prefix. I call it Lakeside, and a counter. And every time you collect a data set, that counter is going to go up. Now, the actual file naming structure, again, once you get your prefix and your counter number, everything should fall in. I typically use a default, which includes the tag name and so forth. What there's in Analyze is actually also a good way to manage all those large data file numbers, but make sure that you get the right prefix. Usually the default is EGL. You can obviously put it whatever you want, customer site number and so forth. So setting up the OPC driver, obviously this is the driver that actually will communicate with the OPC database in the 𝗪𝗕𝗦 system or your control system. So the way you do it, you go back to setup, DDE OPC driver. You can actually have up to 8 OPC drivers operating at the same time. You select OPC, and then you will actually go look at to be a 𝗪𝗕𝗦 local host. That's all good. Transfer mode, it says synchronous. You can actually change that to don't care, just to make it easier. One last thing is that if the data quality goes bad, it will insert a value of 10,000. That's why you know you've had some bad quality data coming in. So you go click assign server, click start. Here's telling me you've changed some parameters. You don't have to worry too much about that. But you can see now the ticks are going up. That means the driver is actually now operating and communicating with the OPC database. It's connected. I hope you found this video interesting. The next one will be how to set up the data collection and collecting data and how to manipulate the trends and so forth. Thank you very much.